brings together stars like this, all in one episode.
You're good at practice.
And prepare yourself
I can trust a cynic, but I can't trust a hypocrite.
for an election shocker.
I thought it only fair to warn you.
Thursday, The Good Wife at 10:35 on Pearl.
Jail terms for 4 defendants convicted in the Raphael Hui corruption case. 2 Deloitte accountants to manage operations at ATV. And a complete internet outage for several hours in North Korea. Good evening. A judge has handed down jail terms to former Chief Secretary Raphael Hui and 3 top executives of Sun Hung Kai Properties. Hui was given a 7.5-year prison term for corruption and misconduct in public office. Former Sun Hung Kai Properties Joint Chairman Thomas Kwok received 5 years, while 2 others also have to serve time behind bars. We begin our coverage with this report from Rani Samtani.
Raphael Hui is the most senior former government official to be convicted in a Hong Kong court. Mr. Justice Andrew McRae said it was quite clear to him that Hui was one of the instigators as well as beneficiaries of these conspiracies. Hui was found guilty of 5 out of 8 charges. For counts 1 and 6, which involved misconduct in public office, McRae said because they did not involve bribery or corruption, a sentence of 18 months on each count would be appropriate. For counts 5, 7, and 8, conspiracy to commit misconduct in public office, conspiracy to offer advantages to a public servant, and misconduct in public office, McRae said the starting point for sentencing is at 6 years in jail each. The judge said Hong Kong has fought long and hard since the 1970s to rid itself of corruption, and to know that the former number 2 in government had received bribes must be a deep disappointment to many people in Hong Kong. McRae said Hui was highly regarded, articulate, and diplomatic. And had it not been for this case, he would probably have gone down in history as one of Hong Kong's finest chief secretaries in recent years. But unfortunately, like all tragic characters, he had a flaw, said McRae. The judge said he took into account Hui's contributions to Hong Kong and his good character and decided to deduct 9 months from his sentence. Hui will have to serve a total of 7.5 years in prison. Hui has also been asked to return the $11.182 million to the government, the amount he received in 2007. As for the $8.5 million that Hui received in 2005, the judge explained that he won't have to turn this over as it wasn't caught under the Prevention of Bribery Ordinance. The judge said sentencing was his most difficult task, particularly because the case is dealing with otherwise decent men who are not young but who have committed serious offenses. He added that it is often said that sentencing is an art and not a science, and if it were a science, it would have been an easier exercise to conduct. The Civil Service Bureau said it will study the judgment to decide whether or not to cancel, suspend, or deduct payments of Hui's retirement benefits. Rani Samtani, TVB News.
The other 3 defendants convicted in the corruption case received prison terms of between 5 and 6 years. Dainto has more.
The son and daughter of former Sun Hung Kai Properties co-chairman Thomas Kwok were both at the High Court this morning. After he was sentenced, Kwok's advice to his children were too good. His son repeated 3 times to him through the dock's glass wall that they will behave themselves. Also in the courtroom was Kwok's younger brother Raymond, the only defendant found not guilty in the trial. Thomas Kwok was sentenced for a single offence of conspiracy to commit misconduct in public office. Mr. Justice Andrew McRae set the starting point for the sentence at 6 years in prison. He called the payment of the $8.5 million bribe an extremely serious example of the offence, as the money was transferred to Raphael Hui in a deliberately complex and intricate way. But pointing out that he was moved by the genuineness of Kwok's Christian faith and his compassion for those less fortunate than himself, The judge said he had absolutely no doubt that Kwok is, at heart, a good man. He sentenced Kwok to 5 years in prison with a $500,000 fine. Legal representatives of Thomas Kwok say they'll lodge an appeal in the next few days, but not against the sentence.
It was an appropriate sentence, a proper sentence. Quite lenient, I say.
Two other defendants in the case, former Hong Kong Stock Exchange official Francis Kwan and former executive director of Sun Hung Kai Properties Thomas Chan, were found guilty on 2 charges each. Mr. Justice McRae said, judging from the mitigation letters, Thomas Chan is clearly a loyal, competent and well-regarded director of the property developer. But describing Chan as central to the intricacy of the scheme and central to the conspiracy, the judge gave him a 6-year jail term and a $500,000 fine. As for the 5th defendant, Francis Kwan, the judge said he was an important and trusted player in the conspiracies, who knew exactly what he was doing and was well rewarded for his part. Saying he was impressed by the letters of pleas on behalf of Kwan, many of which say his involvement in the offences seems out of character, the judge finally handed down a sentence of 5 years in prison. Diane To, TVB News.
The corruption case involving the former Chief Secretary for Administration has exposed the uneasy relationship between big business and government. But critics say more still needs to be done to plug the loopholes in the system, which has tempted some to stray. It was revealed during the corruption trial that the former chief secretary had received money from Sun Hung Kai Properties right before he took office. Raphael Hui argued during the trial that there is no regulation that stipulates government officials must declare any benefits they've received before joining the administration. Hui was eventually found guilty of corruption. However, this case shows it can be difficult to prove collusion between business and officialdom. And Hui is not the only top official accused of corruption. His old boss, a former chief executive Donald Tsang, was also accused of corruption after he left office. Even the current chief executive Leung Chun-ying was recently accused of receiving millions from an Australian company while in public office. In 2012, former Chief Justice Andrew Lee led the Independent Review Committee for the Prevention and Handling of Potential Conflicts of Interests to look into such cases. However, up until now, the committee's suggestions still haven't been implemented. Veteran Pan-Democrat Lee Wing-tat recalls shortly after Raphael Hui became chief secretary, the Legislative Council raised the issue of him receiving benefits. He said there are legal loopholes and officials know how to take advantage of them. The most worrying thing is, Lee went on to say, is that the standard of officialdom will drop to an unacceptable level. Former Civil Service Secretary Joseph Wong said there has been an increase in business people joining the government. But he also said that to end these conflict of interest cases, the government shouldn't focus on ending the relationship between the business and public sector. Instead, it should improve its integrity checking and asset declaration systems. The High Court has appointed accountancy firm Deloitte to manage operations at Asia Television. A Deloitte press release states 2 of its accountants will become managers of the cash-strapped station. This comes after the court approved an application by ATV shareholder Tsai Ing-ming to appoint an independent supervisor to the station's board of directors. According to Tsai, it's to prevent ATV's major shareholder, Wang Ben-kun, and his family from dominating the board. ATV staff are still waiting for their November paychecks. The Confederation of Trade Unions is calling on the government to raise the retirement age for security guards from 65 to 70 to ease manpower shortages. Stephanie Cho reports.
Calling on the government to raise the maximum age for security guards under the Security and Guarding Services Ordinance from 65 to 70, more than a dozen representatives from the Confederation of Trade Unions marched from Admiralty Center to the central government offices. They said as long as security guards pass annual body checks, even those above 65 will be able to handle their tasks. This retired security guard insists that he's still in the right shape for the job and has the added advantage of years of experience. The Hong Kong Confederation of Trade Unions added that a larger supply of security guards will be needed to cope with the increasing supply of housing. It stressed that manpower shortage can be relieved by relaxing age restrictions for the industry. But the Amoy Gardens Owners Committee pointed out that elderly security guards may find their jobs too physically demanding. Committee Chairman Yip Hing Kwok said residents would appreciate younger security guards who are more energetic. Our residents are mostly young couples, he said, so doddering guards would make Amoy Gardens look bad. Elderly guards would not be able to serve residents properly, Yip added. The Owners Committee Chairman also pointed out that hiring security guards above the age of 60 means employers will have to pay greater medical insurance premiums. Stephanie Choi, TVB News.
Turning overseas now. North Korea at the center of a confrontation with the United States over the hacking of Sony Pictures had a complete internet outage for several hours earlier today. Alan Buknia reports.
The U.S. State Department has declined to say if Washington was behind the internet shutdown in North Korea. Last week, President Barack Obama vowed to respond proportionately to the cyber attack on Sony Pictures that the FBI blames on Pyongyang. North Korea denies its involvement in the hacking. Yesterday, a State Department spokeswoman addressed Pyongyang's demand for a joint investigation into the incident.
The government of North Korea has a long history of denying responsibility for destructive and provocative actions, and if they want to help here, they can admit their culpability and compensate Sony for the damages that they caused.
Sony spent more than $40 million filming the interview, the movie pulled in the face of terrorist attack threats. Meanwhile, Beijing called reports that China may have helped in the Sony hacking attack irresponsible. Almost all of North Korea's internet links pass through China. Last week, Washington asked Beijing to identify any North Korean hackers operating in China and send them back. South Korea is also investigating whether the North is behind a hacking attack on its nuclear power operator. President Park Geun-hye called a recent series of leaks of data a grave situation, unacceptable to national security. Korea Hydro and Nuclear Power, which operates 23 reactors, said the hacked data released was non-critical. It's currently conducting drills meant to prepare workers in the event of cyber attacks aimed at disabling control systems. But the company and the energy minister assured that the systems are safe. The South Korean Defense Ministry said it's establishing a cyber operations division to beef up defense against online warfare. Alan Buknia, TVB News.
The U.S. Justice Department wants to open a federal investigation into the fatal shooting of an unarmed black man by a white police officer in Milwaukee last April. Tony Sabine has more.
Christopher Manny won't be charged because local authorities concluded he shot Dontre Hamilton in self-defense. Manny is at least the third white police officer to avoid charges in the past month after a confrontation that led to a black man's death.
The death of Dontre Hamilton is a tragedy for everyone involved. My decision today that criminal charges will not be issued against Officer Manny does not depreciate the very legitimate concerns raised any time a law enforcement officer uses deadly force against a citizen.
Other notable cases of deadly police force against black men include the ones involving Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, and Eric Garner in New York City, cases which have generated controversy and debate in America. These and others have seen relations between America's police and citizens sink to a new low. It's led some to wonder whether the murder of several cops over the weekend was motivated by some desire for revenge. As the New York Police Department mourned two fallen officers who were shot dead last Saturday, Mayor Bill de Blasio pleaded for a pause in protests against the city's law enforcement.
So I'd ask that any organizations that were planning events or gatherings that are about politics and protest, that could be for another day. Let's accompany these families on their difficult journey. Let's see them through the funerals. Then debate can begin again. But until that time,